Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel, and today we are reviewing Sinners, directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan, Miles Caton, Hailee Steinfeld, Wunmi Mosaku, Delroy Lindo, Jack O'Connell, and of course, Michael B. Jordan. And earlier this week I saw this video of Ryan Coogler talking about the format this film was shot on and all the different ways that you can seek this movie out in theaters. From standard digital projection in 276x1 to IMAX 190x1 to the very few 70mm IMAX screens across the country. And you can tell just through this video that this man has so much passion for the art of film and the theatrical experience, bringing my respect for him as a filmmaker to even higher levels than before. And with me being a big fan of all his past movies leading up to his first original theatrical blockbuster, I of course was extremely excited for this film with the highest of expectations, and I am so happy that I loved Sinners, and it honestly might be my favorite film from Coogler to date, so I cannot wait to get into this film. And as always, I will be getting to spoilers for this film, so if you haven't had a chance to watch it on the big screen, do yourself a favor, go watch this movie, and come back and let's just get into this film. So what is this film about? Well, it follows twins named Smoke and Stack, played by Michael B. Jordan, as they return to their hometown to open a juke bar, with the 1930s Jim Crow South being the backdrop of the film. Through them, we meet our ensemble of characters in Sammy, their little cousin who will bring the blues to the party, Mary, an old flame that has beef with Stack, Annie, Smoke's wife, who together grieve the loss of their infant daughter, Delta Slim, the town drunk who also has an affinity for the blues, Grace and BO CHOW, who are store owners and old friends of the twins, Cornbread, another old friend and bouncer to the juke bar, and PEARLINE, a potential love interest for young Sammy. As things come together for the grand opening of the juke bar, we are then introduced to Jack O'Connell's REMMICK and a few of his victims as they bring a great evil to turn this night into all of their worst nightmares. And yes, this evil is represented through them being bloodthirsty, cult-like vampires.
Don't cry. It's all better now. Yes, I lied to you.
Now, before I really dive into the character dynamics, which to me is the best part of this film, I feel like I need to establish here at the top of this review what the rules are for the vampires, because this informs the character decisions throughout the story, and is something that didn't fully click for me until the mid-credits scene of the film, which is an absolute must-watch. Honestly, one of the most important scenes in the entire film. Coogler has a lot of fun playing with the tropes of vampire stories. All of the basic rules here apply. They need to be invited in. Their weaknesses are garlic, silver, holy water, and of course wooden stakes. They use seduction and manipulation to get close to their victims before making the kill. Every rule you can think of in vampire lore is utilized here, except maybe turning to bats, but I'm fine leaving that one out.
Screw this, I'm flying. Who's with me? Bat!
He doesn't have the address, so, you know.
I don't have the address.
But it's the idea that they have a shared mind that elevates this film's interpretation of vampires for me, because our first three vampires are either clan members or have that all lives matter assimilationist mentality. Every time a new character is killed, it fuels the cult-like behavior of these vampires. So keep this in mind as I talk about these dynamics, especially when it comes to Stack and Mary. This movie uses a great amount of its screen time throughout the first half of the film, really diving into the interpersonal relationships between all of these characters, before even introducing the idea that there are vampires in this story. It plays first and foremost as a drama about Black culture, specifically through music being the thing that holds this town and family together. The film has such a great rhythm in introducing the ensemble, the drama between all of the characters, and why we should care for each of them individually first. If there were no vampires or turn to the horror genre, which is another reason why I was so excited for this film, I don't think I would care. Each character dynamic I am about to get into feels so lived in and real, which is very hard for a filmmaker to accomplish. You get something like that in a show like Midnight Mass, which has a lot of time in 7 episodes to explore its characters and themes, but this is a movie, and I think that this movie does just as good of a job in exploring these characters in such a short amount of time as that show did, which if you have not seen Midnight Mass, it's my favorite vampire thing ever. This one is also pretty close up to it, but definitely watch Midnight Mass if you enjoy this movie. It is brilliant. My personal favorite dynamic within this film was the relationship between Stack and Mary. Stack is afraid that an interracial relationship in this day and age will lead to only danger for Mary, but you can feel the magnetic chemistry between the love of these two characters, keep them in each other's orbits. These two are the first to turn once the vampires show up to the bar, which could have easily been the end of the arc between these two. They could have just been mindless monsters from this point on, following the cult's intended goals of turning every last person into another vampire, only to burn in the sunlight at the end of the film alongside the others. And for a while, even up until the credits began to roll, that's exactly what it was. It was honestly a little disappointing to me, but the mid-credits scene then reveals that 6 years later, Stack and Mary are still around, not having aged a day. They ran off together as the rest of the cult of vampires were killed, severing the assimilationist mindset that was leading them to attack their own people. And I absolutely love this for these characters in particular because, for one, they get to be together for eternity and get to live to see a future where they can embrace their love without fear of retribution. Michael B. Jordan and Hailee Steinfeld had such great chemistry in selling this relationship that I was really rooting for them to be together, and I couldn't be happier about them getting to do just that. A perfect ending for their story. When it comes to the other twin, Smoke, we get to explore why this solution wouldn't have worked for him and Annie. You see that they have been apart because of the loss of their infant daughter, but that love between them will never truly fade. With Annie being extremely spiritual, performing rituals and gifting a necklace of sorts that holds like a protective spell for Smoke, she believes that when she dies, she will finally be reunited with her child. She tells Smoke that if she is bit, to not let her turn, to kill her while her soul is still pure, and to return to her when it is his time to die as well. Annie's death definitely hit the hardest for me because you knew in that moment, after that conversation that they had earlier in the film, that it would be final for that character as long as Smoke lived up to his word. Even after her death, the protective necklace did seem to do its job in protecting him in a moment where the vampire Stack could have easily killed his brother, but it seemed like they had some sort of effect on him to, bring Stack back in that moment. We don't get to see the end of this encounter, but as the mid-credit scene explains, Smoke essentially made a deal with Stack that he would let him and Mary live if he is able to kill the rest of the vampires, and as long as they stay away from Sammy. After all is done and the sunlight is able to kill the rest of the vampires, Smoke takes on the clan members who never truly plan on letting the twins keep this barn that they bought at the beginning of the film to run their juke bar. He is eventually killed through his wounds after killing the rest of these clan members, which was very satisfying, by the way, which allows him to return to his wife and daughter in another perfect ending for these characters. To me, Sammy is probably the heart of the film. The story of the twins holds a lot of heart on their own, but Sammy gets so much more deeper meanings throughout his arc inside of this film. This character is essentially the outlet for Coogler and composer Ludwig Göransson to essentially tell the story through music, and as a half-white, half-Asian man, I'm probably not the one to fully dive into how integral black culture is within this film and how it weaves throughout this story, but they do make it clear that music is one thing that ties their culture through time with one of my favorite sequences in this entire film. As Sammy plays his blues through the juke bar, we get a fantastic wonder as we weave through different eras of music, from ancient African drummers to blues of the 30s to the more modern era of DJs and hip-hop. You can see that the music is so important in this sequence and it is so incredibly thrilling. The way the wonder weaves between all these different eras and pans up to see the building burning around them, and you get to see our vampires looking in and become fixated on Sammy's character. You can see that this character is going to be very important to the goal of our villains. If Sammy is turned, they then will have fully assimilated black culture, past and future, into this cult of theirs, essentially erasing all meaning that gives these characters their individuality. But beyond the more heightened metaphors shown through the vampires, this theme is very much present in Sammy's life before they even showed up. The film opens up with Sammy running into his church, covered in all the wounds and blood that he gained after the events of this film, holding the remnants of his guitar. His father insists on him putting it down and repenting, as he believes his antics and running off with Smoke and Stack is unholy and sinful. He also wants his son to assimilate into this church, while Sammy wants to be more than that. He wants to play his blues and share culture throughout the world with his music. He does eventually decide to run off with his guitar to live his life free of this town he felt very much trapped in at the beginning of the film, which we then catch up to him 6 years later. We see him happy with many records under his tenure as a musician. Stack is proud of who he's become and offers to make him immortal to be able to keep making his music. Turning down the offer, Sammy decides to play the same song he played all those years ago, with them both admitting that before the sun set on that fateful night, it was the best day of both of their lives, a day that made them truly feel free, a day that Smoke and Stack were together for the last time, to be able to watch the sunset together for the last time. Just another perfect ending for a character in this film, and just a perfect ending note to end this film on. The rest of the cast, however, had much more tragic endings. PEARLINE was bit and burned once the sun rose, leaving a grieving Sammy behind. Delroy Lindo's Delta Slim was one of my favorite characters throughout the film. He added a lot of humor and levity to this film, with him sacrificing himself to allow the others to escape. I always love seeing Delroy Lindo in films whenever he pops up in them, and he was definitely snubbed for an Oscar for The Five Bloods, but that's a whole other story.
Yo, smell anything? I think I shot myself.
Grace and BO CHOW had a very tragic end. I really loved their introduction into this film as two store owners that worked across the street from one another. There was another really great wonder in that sequence as their daughter walked from one store to the other to help get the word out about Smoke and Stack's juke bar. These characters, along with Delta Slim and Cornbread, really sold the feeling that there was a deep-rooted history between all of these characters. You can immediately tell that Smoke and Stack have a certain reputation of being trouble when they were younger, and are still probably up to a lot of trouble to this day. You can tell that they acquired their wealth in Chicago through probably very suspicious means, but either way, they are still loved by the members of the community and are willing to pitch in to the juke bar. Of the two, Bo is the one who is killed first and threatens to turn their daughter when the vampires eventually go into town. I can see some people being very frustrated with how Grace reacts in these sequences. She's very devastated by the loss of her husband and is truly terrified for their daughter that she was willing to invite all the vampires in to try and kill every last one of them before they even get a chance to go into town. This does lead to the deaths of pretty much everyone involved, but at least I understand the sentiment that led this character to make that decision. And it led to a damn good and violent sequence of vampires invading this barn. Grace ends up getting burned alive along with Bo as they tragically go out together. Also, on a side note, I really love how seriously Coogler took the rule about vampires being invited in. It's one of those rules in other films that easily is ignored or made fun of, like in What We Do in the Shadows, but here it adds a lot of intensity and leads to some of the really great dialogue sequences as trustworthy faces with untrustworthy motivations are trying to get inside this barn. This does include Cornbread, who also dies once the sun comes up, but not without leaving an impact on the story as yet another character that had some light moments of levity as well. Then we have REMMICK's eventual demise, which was so incredibly satisfying. He definitely has an evil speech that he feels the need to say rather than killing our heroes, but I'll give that cliche a pass. I don't really know why it took me halfway through the film to realize that one shot in the trailer of Michael B. Jordan and Miles Caton in the water staring up to the rising flame during sunrise to piece together that was probably going to be how Remmick dies, but sometimes I'm slow with those sort of things, which I do think that shot definitely should not have been in the trailer, but it was either way, still a great moment. I did at first think that seeing Hailee Steinfeld and one of the twins as vampires was a spoiler in that second trailer, which I do think that trailer did show a little bit too much, but since they were the first two to go and the fact that the mid-credits scene added so much to those characters, I forgive the trailers for that one as well.
We gonna kill every last one of you.
In terms of any flaws for this film, I don't think I really have any. I'm really glad they spent the amount of time that they did building up to the night at the juke bar, building up the character dynamics and themes. Once shit hits the fan, it really hits the fan. Bodies drop like every 2 to 4 minutes towards the end of this film, which was extremely exciting. Annie's character does feel a bit convenient in suspecting that they're all vampires right away. Some of the fun in films like this is watching our characters learn the rules of the supernatural, but here, she just kind of knows it all. Maybe the vampires could have been brought into the fold slightly earlier, or some more time could have been dedicated to them making mistakes and learning what not to do, but that's another thing that I can forgive for this movie. But other than that, this is a damn near perfect film from Ryan Coogler, and I said at the top of this review that this might be my favorite film of his, and the more that I talk about it, I really think that is true. He is yet another auteur filmmaker in the ranks of Christopher Nolan and Jordan Peele, who can make original blockbuster films shot in IMAX to get as big of a release that this film is getting. He really does know how to take advantage of the IMAX format to make a truly unique theatrical experience. Gerald Arkapa's cinematography is cinematic and vibrant. The contrast in highlights and shadows in this film is only amplified by it being shot on film, which is something I will always nerd out about. And in terms of vampire films, it deserves to be spoken in the same sentence as other more recent genre redefining films like A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, What We Do in the Shadows, Let the Right One In, Midnight Mass, Doctor Sleep, and of course, the most recent Nosferatu film. I just really hope people show up and support this film, because the last time we got an original film like this that was released in theaters, in IMAX like this, was Nope and Tenet. There are very few and far between, so if you live near an IMAX screen, definitely seek it out in that format to see the full scope of the sequences shot specifically for that format. And if you live near a 7mm IMAX theater as well, it's definitely worth the price of admission. I cannot wait to see it myself in 70mm. I'm seeing it tomorrow in that format, and I cannot wait to watch this movie again. But those are just going to be my thoughts on Ryan Coogler's Sinners. I'm sure there's a lot in this film that I missed in my first viewing, so definitely let me know in the comments what you thought of this film. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one. I am a massive fan of The Last of Us Part 2, so I will be doing weekly reviews for Season 2 of the HBO series. I also just wrapped up my reviews for Daredevil Born Again, which I really enjoyed as well. I believe next week will be Until Dawn in terms of movies, so definitely stay tuned on the channel for that video as well. So thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.